All right, I'm going to turn it over to our amazing counselors to let them introduce themselves, and then we will get started.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Garrett Ramey. I am the counselor at Robertson Elementary, and tonight I'll be discussing the social emotional well-being of your students as they transition from 5th to 6th grade.
Hi there, I'm Suzanne O'Brien. I'm the school counselor at Fern Bluff Elementary School. Go Bobcats! This is my 14th year there, and this is a special topic near and dear to my heart as a school counselor and as a parent. I've got 3 kiddos, all of whom have come through Round Rock ISD or are still there. And so I've lived this experience of transitioning from elementary to middle school as a parent 3 times now, and as a school counselor countless times. Happy to be here.
Hi, good evening. My name is Jennifer Pugh, and I am one of the counselors at Walsh Middle School, and I am excited to be here this evening and share with you all about transitioning from elementary to middle school.
Hello, good evening. I'm Melissa Leverett, and I'm one of the counselors at Grisham Middle School. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about the core courses and the elective courses that our 5th graders will get to pick before they head on to middle school. This is my favorite time of the year. I love welcoming all of our new soon-to-be 6th graders, and the 8th graders, I'm sure, are happy to be moving on to high school too. But this is a great topic, and welcome.
Well, thank you. And we have almost 200 attendees here today, counselors. So I'm excited about this presentation. Again, thank you all for joining us today. I'm really going to turn it over to the counselors, but just to give you a brief idea of our timeline today, we're going to be looking at the process and timeline and how we move our students from elementary to middle school. Then we're going to take a little bit of time looking at the differences between our core classes and electives and what that really entails and how students select those courses. We also know that the transition piece for students and for our parents can be somewhat stressful. I have a 6th grader this year as well, and I've been a middle school counselor. I was a middle school counselor for 10 years. I've been doing counseling for about 15 years. And even as a parent, sending my student off to middle school was just stressful and a little bit of, I had a little bit of anxiety there. So we know that there's some strong feelings and emotions around the transition process for both students and their families. So we're gonna hit on that a little bit today, but we also wanna make sure that we are promoting independence for our 6th grade students. 6th grade is a really interesting time. We know that they're no longer our elementary babies, but they're not full adults either. So we want to make sure that we're promoting independence, but at the same time, we are still there to support them along their journey. So thank you again, like I said, again, for joining us today. And I am going to turn it over to have a discussion about the actual transition process.
If I may interject really quickly, I just noticed in the chat that some were wondering about the middle school to high school transition. I don't know if you wanted to just touch base on that real quick, LaShonda.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Ramey. Unfortunately, we had some communication errors over the last couple of days. And so some information was shared with parents that this was a session on transitioning from middle school to high school. This is indeed a session on transitioning from elementary to middle school. A couple of months ago, we did a session on middle school to high school, and you can find that information on our district website. So if you go to the district website and go to counseling services, you will find a video where we had middle school counselors as well as high school counselors talking about that transition process. If you have any further questions in relation to the middle school to high school transition process, you can always contact your high school counselors. We do apologize for that communication error, but again, this is for elementary to middle school transition. All right, well, we're gonna turn it over to the elementary to middle school transition process.
All right, thank you, Dr. Lewis. To start us off, I wanted to just talk to you all about the transition procedures. Each campus, when we're talking about elementary students moving to the middle school campus, each middle school campus has an individualized timeline for when information is distributed to students and when choice sheets are due back to the middle school campus. So typically what we do is we start off at the elementary school sharing information with your children about the courses that are offered. Typically for our campus, we go through the choice sheet and kind of walk the students through so that it's not the first time they see it when they get a copy. And so we share with them how we want them to complete the choice sheet. This year, I imagine that they'll be virtually distributed to the students, and so usually that goes to the students' accounts. And then there's a due date that we need to have them completed and the choices are made. So we also, after we go to the schools and we share the information with the students, we will post that information to our websites and make that available. And then we also send the information, then we'll have a parent night. And that way for incoming 6th grade students and their parents, so that we can share the same information with parents so that you all are aware of what is offered on our campus, what choices your children have for classes. And then we will answer questions that are specific to our campus and so forth. This year we'll be having virtual parent nights. And so after the information is given out, oftentimes there's lots of questions for students and parents. And so we, get excited and we look forward to answering your questions and sharing that information with you all. And then once we have the choice sheet data back on our campus and we know what the students have selected, then we start our scheduling process. And so what that looks like for us is electives really drive our schedule. And so when we start looking at how many students want to take a particular class and how many sections we need of that class, and so that's really where we start all of that information and building process on our end. Can we go to the
Jennifer,
next slide?
before you go on to the next slide, can you tell us what a choice sheet is?
Yes, so a choice sheet is a list of electives that students complete and let us know. So a few things are on there. Students are placed in classes for language arts, science and social studies, and math. For 6th grade students, we ask for parents and students to make that decision for the math placement together. And so I know that one of the other counselors here in a little bit is going to talk about the different maths that are offered for 6th grade students. And so then we have them choose their PE choice. Typically that choice is between a typical PE class called wellness education or dance. And so those are usually the 2 options that are offered throughout the district for 6th grade. There may be a couple of others depending on if a school has a specialized program, but typically those are 2 that you see. And then for us, we have our electives that are offered. And so that might be band and orchestra and art, foreign language. For some campuses, that's Spanish and French, depending on what the campuses offer or any specialized programs. There may be other languages included. And then we've also got classes like theater arts. There may be some classes that are specialized to a specific campus. And so, but those will all be listed. The options that are offered for your particular child at their middle school campus will be listed on that choice sheet. And then we usually ask the students to pick 3 choices minimal. Some campuses may ask for more, but what that does is it prioritizes the children's selections for their schedule. So for instance, if we say please number 1 through 3, then 1 would be their first choice, the one that they want the most, and then the 2nd and 3rd choice would follow or would fall into place. So then thinking about how can we prepare students for the middle school to elementary transition, familiarize yourself with your middle school's website, because everything, especially this year with being so much being virtual, we will be posting all of that information. I know for some campuses they'll be doing different flyers for, for the different elective classes. So if that's or sorry, I lost my words there, orchestra or band, or choir or theater, there'll be information specific to those classes and what it looks like on that campus. And then we post a lot of different information, the course catalogs, which are good because it lists all of the information about, like, if you want to know a little bit more about what a course entails, if you wanted to know more about what students will be learning in art, it will give more of a detailed sorry, I was distracted there, a detailed description of what's offered in, or what is the curriculum that's being taught in those classes. Also, we will post information on instrument selection dates for band and for orchestra, and those are where students will sometimes they come to campus and do that. This year, some of the instrument selection dates were virtual, but it will have more information regarding those and what they will look like. You'll also find on campus websites who your campus contacts are at the middle school level. Most of our campuses, we have where we roll with our students. So for instance, at our campus, we've got our 8th grade counselor who transitions those students to high school, and so they'll circle back around to the 6th grade incoming students. And then other campuses may have it alpha split, so that information will be posted so that you'll know who to reach out to get answers to your questions. And then also make sure that you're signed up for receiving communication from your current elementary school, and then also sign up to get information from your future middle school. That way you have dates and timelines and information coming from both, that way that you stay in the loop. Also check your current elementary campus e-news to make sure you're aware of timelines and upcoming information nights. We send out the information and we post at the middle school level, but we also share all of that with the elementaries, and they are great to partner with us and share that information with parents as well, so that parents know when to attend a meeting, when they're happening, and then dates that are coming up. And then also familiarize yourself, I would recommend, with how to access your child's email. This year, I think most of us are really great at that, because that's how a lot of the communication is coming through. But just making sure that students know how to access their school email, because that's where most of us send the choice sheet link when we do the electronic choice sheet. And so I think we'll be seeing more of that this year as choice sheets are preparing to go out to students. And so just making sure that your child knows how to log in and access their email so that they don't miss that communication. A few other things are start having conversations with your children about their interests and what classes they may want to take. Middle school is a phenomenal time to explore and see what their interests are, to see what captivates them, and to see where their talents lie. And so it's a good time to try out and see if they are interested in theater, or if they like to sing, or if they're interested in an instrument. It's a great time to get involved. And then as you're hearing information from the schools and you're getting that information, sharing with your children to help alleviate any concerns, because they do. It's very typical for students to be nervous about the transition, going to a new school, the unknown, and also as parents, there's a lot of things that we have questions about. And so just keeping those lines of communication open with your students and talking with them about the things that they're interested in, and making those decisions together about the classes that they will be taking. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us at the middle school level. I put on there that we are excited. We get excited each time we have a new grouping of students. I think the beginning of any school year, but also just the new students coming into middle school. Our 6th grade teachers are phenomenal about helping them transition and learning just all the different components that are involved with middle school, and we look forward to partnering with you all and building our community in their future.
Jennifer, before we move on, I do have a couple questions in the chat
Okay.
that I think you can answer. What if you're planning on transferring to a different middle school in the district? How do you do choice sheets for that?
Okay, great question. So if I would recommend that you go ahead and complete the choice sheet for the middle school that you are zoned to attend. And I say that because our systems are the same system across the district. So for instance, if we have a student who is zoned, like if I'm speaking about Walsh, we have a student who's currently zoned for Cedar Valley, but is moving and is coming to us, their selections in the computer will roll over into us, and then we can see what they've chosen. And so there's always communication that's happening between parents and counselors and registrars during that time as well, but still completing the choice sheet. And I think your elementary counselors will seek that information from you as well. But it's good because when we're in the district, we all communicate with one another. And so keeping that in the system, we're able to see a student's prior choices at their campus.
Thank you, Jennifer. And what if the person or the student rather is not currently living in the district, but will be here for middle school? Or
Okay.
currently attending an elementary school in the district, but will be next semester, next school year?
Okay, great question.
Question B.
So what I would do is, if you already know the middle school that you are going to attend, if they're moving within to the district boundaries, I would reach out to the middle school, and they can tell you when their dates for pre-registration will happen. And then that just means you can go ahead and fill out some of the online information once the pre-registration window is open. And then they can verify the proof of residency, and then we will send out a choice sheet once we have all of that information filled out. Typically, we don't send them out ahead of time, but we can work with parents to get that taken care of to make sure that their students' needs are met. So I would just recommend reaching out to the registrar at the campus or the counselor or a counselor at the campus where your student will be for the following school year, and then we can get the process started.
Thank you, Jennifer. We're going to turn it over to Melissa at this time, and she's going to discuss our core classes and elective choices with us.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis. I just wanted to also add to Ms. Pugh's comment about the transferring, because I am at Grisham Middle School. So it's often that families will transfer into our school, and we ask that you please have an up-to-date phone number and email address. That is the most important thing, whether you're transferring out of district or you're within the district, because that's our lifeline. That's how we're going to be able to contact you in the summer and get all of those little details worked out before the first day of school. So please make sure you've updated that. Or if you're coming to us from one of our feeder elementaries, and let's say you've moved to a different apartment number, even the number can hold up some of the registration process. So please be sure that you've talked to your elementary school secretary and let them know that you've moved or that you have a new phone number or anything. That would really help us and help make that transition very smooth.
Can I interject one more thing?
Yes, go ahead.
Clever. I'm so sorry. I did just read one question, and I meant to address this earlier, so I'm not sure that I did. But someone asked about the timeline, and that's a great question. I had it written down just to let you all know. Most often, we start those visits with the elementary campuses towards the end of this month, the end of January, mid to end of January. We'll start having those conversations and then with students, and then we will start posting and having parent nights soon after. So I know ours is scheduled early February, and then our choice sheets are due before the end of the month, before the end of February. So I would, I would say just check out the website for the middle school that you are zoned to attend, and they should have dates posted. And just also just checking in and keeping, the elementaries are great about posting that information and sharing it out with their e-news as well. Just letting parents know when to expect the choice sheets. And so I would say that, now keeping an eye out now is when the information will be going out this month, and then choice sheets should be due next month.
Yes, I definitely agree. This is the timeline for us, same thing at Grisham. And I think a lot of the middle schools are within the same timeline because we're building master schedules around spring break. And so, yes, definitely be looking for that information. I know it's the beginning of the new semester and it's fast and furious. Kids are always saying, well, we just became sixth graders and now we're going to be seventh graders, or the fifth graders are already wanting to know about sixth grade. Yeah, it comes pretty quickly. So the core courses that all of our sixth graders will be taking are language arts, world cultures, which is our history, science, and then math. Math is the one that has multiple levels, depending on what programs your child is involved in. For example, if math is an on-level class, it's the right fit class, then they're going to be in Math 6. If your student is really achieving very highly in their regular fifth grade math class and they're not in any special programs, then you might consider putting them on the accelerated track. And what that means is that as a sixth grader, they will take all of the sixth grade TEKS, which is the essential knowledge and skills that they will need to have for a sixth grader, and half of the seventh grade TEKS. So they'll need to have the skills for all of sixth grade and half of seventh completed in 1 year. And I know you're probably thinking that's a lot of knowledge and skills to learn in 1 year. It is, and it goes pretty quickly, but some of our students need that. They need to be on the accelerated track because that really fuels, they love coming to school, it fuels their knowledge and their passion for math. And so if that's your student, then you probably need to sign up for the Math Excel. As a seventh grader, they'll complete the other half of the seventh grade, and then they'll do all of the eighth grade. That leaves room as an eighth grader to do algebra. And the reason I say if your student is passionate about math and they're okay with having a little more homework and they like for the math class to move quickly, the reason I say that is because those skills, those 3 years of skills are done in 2 years to make room for algebra, and algebra is a foundational course. And after meeting with the high school counselors, this is my 7th year at Grisham, so I've seen several cycles of students go up through Westwood. And what they're seeing is students that it was a right fit Excel class for them. They went into algebra, they performed very well at algebra. And historically, those students will also do well as they move up through Westwood and probably any other school, Stony Point or Round Rock or whatever school they're zoned for. Now, I say that because the students that are in Excel and they're struggling in 6th grade and 7th grade because the curriculum is moving too quickly for them, they need it to be a little bit slower, and then they get into algebra and they struggle in algebra, that struggle is going to continue. So the high schools have asked us to really look at students, and by I say we, it's a partnership between counselor, teachers, and parents. Ultimately, you're the expert of your child. You know what your child can handle and what, as a family, you're willing to, whether to do tutorials or that's your child's passion or whatever, you make that decision as a parent. And of course you can consult with us and we'll let you know what we think based on the essential knowledge and skills that are going to be taught that year. But that's why the math track, we have so many levels, because there's so many different interests and abilities within students within math. So if your student is a good math student, they can go right into Math 6. If they're a student that has a passion for math and they're okay with doing a little bit more work or working at a quicker pace to get into that algebra class, then the Excel track is for you. And you can make that decision for your family. The teachers will not make that decision for you. They can obviously consult with you and help you, but ultimately that is a family decision. And then if your student is in the Talented and Gifted program, they're already identified at 5th grade, or they're being tested at 5th grade and they qualify by the end of 5th, then they're going to go into the Math 6 tag class. And so that means that those students will be ready to take algebra as 7th graders and geometry as 8th graders. Now, sometimes students are identified in the Talented and Gifted program, and even though they're identified in math, that's not really an area of passion for them. And they're like, well, I'd really like to pursue other interests, or I have other interests outside of school. So they might furlough. So what that means is they might take the Excel class instead of the tag math class for 6th grade and then move through that cycle. Or they might say, I don't want to do math tag at all. And so they just exit from the program. but that's something you would want to talk to your middle school counselor about and see what would be the best option for your child. So there's really three. So there's the on-level math, which is the state recommended Math 6. And then there's the Math Excel, which is the accelerated 1.5 years in 1 year, algebra as an 8th grader. And then there's the Math Tag class, which is for students that are already identified in talented and gifted. And so those are the 4 courses. Those are their 4 core that they're going to have. And then, of course, lunch, which I always tell the kids, that's my favorite subject. And then advisory or DEN. So those are the core courses that they'll have. Then for their electives, they, like Ms. Pugh said earlier, they'll get either wellness or dance. Now, with the dance class, space is limited because many schools have just 1 or 2 sections, meaning 1 or 2 class periods. And the dance portables are really set up to have about 30 students, maybe 35 students, depending on how the class is set up. So that's a really popular class. So if you want that class, you'll want to sign that up as your first choice and hope that you can get in. But the good thing about dance is that you can take it as a 7th grader and you can take it as an 8th grader as a beginner class. We offer it at all 3 grade levels. So if they don't get in that first year, that's okay. They can do it the 2nd or 3rd year. And wellness, kids ask me, they say, well, Miss Leverett, is wellness the one where I have to play sports and wear tackle stuff and do football? And I'm like, no. Wellness is PE as you know it at elementary school. It's your general physical fitness class. So those are your 2 physical education choices. And then for fine arts, for the IB, for schools that are IB like Hernandez and Grisham, every student has to have a fine art. For the other schools, the options are, you have lots of different options basically. So, but the fine art options are art, which is your painting, drawing, collage. Then you have choir, theater arts, band. An instrument is needed for band, but our district is fortunate enough that some of the schools have school-owned instruments, so you do not have to purchase an instrument in some cases. That would be something you would work out with the band director. We do not want that to be a reason for a child to not sign up for band because it's a financial issue. So please talk to the band director and they will work with you. Same thing for orchestra. There is an instrument that is needed, but like I said, some of them are school-owned unless you have a harp at home. But I know if you play harp, the schools usually own those. So those are your fine arts options. And then there is the languages other than English, our LOTE classes. And there are a lot of different languages that schools have. Spanish 1, French 1, German 1, exploratory and IB Tech are for IB campuses only. And then there is discovering Spanish language and Hispanic culture and, if available. Sorry, subtitles are covering the very bottom of it. So if you are extending if you're coming from an elementary that's a dual language campus, meaning your child has been learning Spanish and English all the way up through 5th grade, and you would like to extend that learning, then you would go into the Discovering Spanish Language and Culture class if that is offered at your campus. It is offered at Grisham and in place of the exploratory and IB Tech class. Those are semester courses, and that, like I said, is only for Hernandez and for Grisham. Some schools, I believe, may be offering Chinese, but I'm not sure. Each year they add different courses, but the 1A means that it is the first year of a course. For example, Ridgeview might offer the Spanish 1A, whereas we would offer the exploratory class, which is all 3 languages. So it just kind of depends on the school, but students will have the option to do a LOTE. So those are the 3 areas in which your child can choose. And I have up at the top, select up to 5 elective choices. Some of the schools are saying put 1 through 5, 1 being your number 1, I must have this, this is my passion, I just love this. And then 5 being, I could live with this, but it's probably not my favorite thing. And then for our campus, because we're so small, we just have students pick 1 through 3. But I know some have up to 5, just depending. And also at the bottom, there's an asterisk saying, please keep in mind that we may have to substitute one of these courses for an academic class if that is something that your student is needing. But of course, that would be a conversation with the school counselor, which is why it's important that we have a current email and a current phone number for you so that we can have that conversation about what's the best fit for your student. Because ultimately, with all of the different choices, we want what's best for your child and what's going to be the right fit for them, especially at math. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Melissa. And I see that we have a lot of questions in the chat. And just to summarize some of the questions I've seen so far before we hand it over to Mr. Ramey, and he'll be talking about feelings and emotions and how to support your child in this transition process and moving off to middle school. So just to summarize a few of those questions, and we'll come back to the majority of these once everyone has had a chance to present. But one of the questions that I saw in there was, or a few questions that I've seen is really pertaining to how do you put all this together? And so Ms. Leverett talked about you have to pick your 4 core classes. I know sometimes when we hand those choice sheets out to our students, they're like, oh, I can pick any class as long as I have, you know, the 7 or 8 that I need. They have to pick those 4. So they have to pick an English, they have to pick a math, they have to pick a science, and they have to pick their social studies class. And really for 6th grade, it's very limited on what their options are for those. Math being the one where they can pick what level they want, whether they're going to go on level or accelerated or tag. But when it comes to your elective classes, students have to fill up the rest of their schedule. So they must pick a PE course that may be a dance or a wellness, which is your traditional PE class that, like Ms. Leverett said, is what you used to know back in elementary, what they're doing right now in 5th grade. And then when they get to 7th and 8th grade, that'll be when they have the options for athletics, which are the courses that they can take where they're going to play sports. So football, volleyball, basketball, track, or any other sport that we have here available in the district. And they're competing against kids in other schools. So they don't have that option in 6th grade, but they do have to take a PE in 6th grade. And then they are able to take any other electives that they need, unless that particular school has a requirement that they want them to take. Like IB has some requirements that are not necessarily seen in some of our other campuses. So I just wanted to clarify a few of the questions I saw in the chat regarding the choices that students have regarding their courses for middle school. But at this time, I'm actually going to turn it over to Mr. Ramey, and he is going to talk to us about how to best support our students as they move into middle school.
Can I just say one thing before you move on?
Yes, go ahead.
Dr. Lewis. So for parents that I know I talked very quickly about all the different electives, when you see the choice sheet, it is broken down. Almost every school has it broken down by PE, fine arts, and then their languages other than English. So it'll be very easy. It'll be self-explanatory. I know it's difficult because we gave you the whole thing, but once you see it, you'll be able to click on that, especially because now they're virtual. So a lot of those are pretty simple to figure out. And there will be a fine arts video or virtual night where you'll get to explore all of the different electives. And then after you've watched that, the fine arts department did say, please, please, please tell the parents to watch those videos or attend that night before they select which elective they want for fine arts, because I think that'll make a difference once your child sees what their options are.
And that is a good point, Melissa. That reminds me of something I wanted to say earlier. Parents, even if your child is not a student on a campus, you can sign up for their newsletters. That information is generally found on the homepage of that school's website. So if you are if your child is going to be at Grisham next school year, but you want to start getting some of that information right now, feel free to go ahead and sign up for their e-news and their newsletter so that you can see some of the information that's going to be going out to not only just your student, but kind of information that's going to be to come as your student moves up through middle school. Mr. Ramey, would you like to kind of help us, and including myself, kind of put us at ease in how we transition our students from elementary to middle school regarding our feelings and emotions?
I sure can. So thank you, panelists, and thank you, parents, for coming tonight. We really appreciate it. Obviously, you all are here tonight to learn more about the process and in particular, the different procedures and the choice sheets and things like that. So what we wanted to talk about now actually is kind of the social emotional component, because I'm sure for a lot of you parents right now, you're feeling some of these things, feeling the stress, the anxiety of sending your babies off into this newfound world, if you will, especially during a time, when they're going through such drastic emotional, psychological, and physical changes that we see from 5th grade to 6th grade. So a part of what I'm going to be talking about is research I have done through different studies I've read, as well as through personal experiences and through other counselors' personal experiences. So the first thing is, understanding that this is a big event for our students. This is huge. This is for a lot of them, this is the biggest thing they've been through in their life. And so this is a huge milestone for them, and rightfully so. But with that, they're going to be feeling these different things. They're going to be feeling that anxiety, that depression, these things that can be increased by that, the lack of motivation, the fear, the lack of belonging. So a lot of questioning who they are as an individual, especially coming from that 5th grade setting where, they went from the kings and queens of the castle all of a sudden back down to the low men and women on the totem pole. So this can be a very stressful situation. But the good news is that kids are incredibly resilient and have great coping skills and their ability to work through that. So if you can go on to the next slide, Dr. Lewis, please. So in my research, what we found really is that, in looking at the research, we found that there's 3 primary components that students have expressed that they are concerned about. And I want to bring up these topics because I think it's important for parents to know, so they understand where their child is at. And we'll talk more about what we can do with this information a little bit further down the line here. But knowing that, again, that this stress is a good thing, it can be a good thing, it challenges us, it motivates us, it forces us to grow. But if it's overwhelming, it can really stunt our growth. And we want to make sure we're finding that optimal place of support. And as parents, I've got 2 daughters myself, 6 and 8-year-olds. And I'm not looking forward to them going to 6th grade just because I know I'm going to be stressed out. But again, having this information, I think, is really beneficial. So from the academic standpoint, students are worried about that increased homework, that increased workload. What's that going to look like? How am I going to be able to handle that? What are these new courses going to look like? Knowing that there's going to be multiple courses now, for a lot of our students, they've had one teacher every year for their entire career. In some schools, they might get 2 or 3, but now they're going to be going up to 7. Wow, that's a lot. So then that academic component they're worried about. Then there's the procedural component, navigating a larger environment. Some of our elementary schools are massive, but for the most part, they're not as big as our middle schools. And also knowing that in our elementary setting, 5th grade's in one corridor, 4th grade's in another, 3rd grade's in another. But now these students are going to have to navigate throughout the entire campus. So again, that increases that stress they're going to be going through. And I mentioned that more classes as well. And then of course, a huge component is the social component, fitting in. How are kids going to react to me? How do I find myself in this new environment, especially as they're going through, like I said earlier, these different changes that the adolescence brings upon them. So making new friends, coping with older students. Again, going back from that comment I said earlier, top of the totem pole in 5th grade, back to the bottom. It's going to be a scary thing. But also there's a fear there of being bullied, and how do we respond to that? So those are some general ideas that they talked about. These are actually specific ones I found in one particular study in the book, Promoting a Successful Transition in Middle School. And I really like having this because I think that this information provides you the possibility for talking points with your students. So specifically these things that the students are worried about. How is it that I'm going to get to class in time? How is it I'm going to find my locker? All these things that they're now new to them. These are talking points that you as a parent can talk about. Well, how do we work through that, right? How do I work through these class changes? How do I work through finding simple things like this? And when you look at it, it almost seems kind of trivial from our adult perspective, right? Like finding the bathroom, you're worried about finding a bathroom? When you get older like me, it is a problem, but that's never. Anyway, with that being said, these are these things that we might see as like, that's not as big of a deal. You got to remember, their life experiences up to this point, this is huge. To them, this is their mortgage. To them, this is paying the bills. This is everything to them. So, that's something that we want to recognize as we're talking to our children, because this is massive. And if you can go to the next slide, please. So how do we deal with this information? How do we work with it? How do we use it to our advantage, really? So these are just some key points that I would suggest is engaging with your student. Number one, I think every one of you here right now is showing that you're clearly invested in engaging with your student. Taking the time out of your night to be with us. Thank you so much for that. So, you're already part of the game. You're already showing your commitment and caring for your child, and continuing to do that. As was said earlier, your child the best, but really talking to them, knowing that this is a big event for them. This is an event that is triggering these thoughts and feelings. So approach your child with intention of curiosity, not criticism. I go back to that idea of not being dismissive. Don't just say, it's not a big deal, you'll be okay. Talk to them and say, well, why are you feeling that way? What's going on? Having those safe, open discussions with them is going to allow them, it's going to have multiple effects for you and your relationship with the child, of course, building more trust and rapport, especially as they're changing, because I only hear the horror stories that come with, the teenage years. But with that being said, if you can have that relationship, as solid as possible and continue to build it like a plant, you got to keep watering it, right? Then that way it'll continue to grow. So having these open discussions where the child feels safe, they feel they can share these things with you, and really coming from that point of curiosity is a great way to do it. Name it to tame it. That's another strategy we use as counselors. So the child's saying, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get to class on time. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to find a locker. I don't know if I'm, hey, so it sounds like you're feeling scared, feeling worried. Giving them those words that that help label that feeling, it gives you a talking point, and it helps them connect to the situation, what's going on with them too. It might sound really simple, but it's amazing that when a student is feeling really upset, they need kind of guidance to get back to that logical thinking. And by naming the emotion, it helps them move from the, basically, as we call it, our lizard brain, where you're losing your train of thought, you're overwhelmed, to back to, okay, wait, let me be logical. Let me think this through. So giving those words helps do that. This one is huge. Sharing your own personal experiences. The ability to let them know that, I went through this too, and this is what I felt. Not just saying I went through it too and I made it, but say, I went through this too, and there were parts that were tough. Because I guarantee you, if you think long and hard about it, there were times when you were stressed out or worried about, am I going to be, accepted by my peers? Personal story. I went first semester of 6th grade. I was practically blind. I wouldn't wear glasses because I didn't want to be judged. And my parents didn't even know I was hiding that until I got the report card, and they said, well, he's getting all F's. Why is that? Apparently supposed to be wearing glasses. Well, why aren't you? So again, it's those personal experiences that you can share that can help really connect to your children and help them understand that, hey, if they've been through this, I can go through this too, and I can come through the other side. And that's part of that listening, to problem solve together. So you're listening to them, really listening, and what is it steps you can take? Okay, so you're worried about you're opening your locker. Well, how can we solve that? Let's practice, practice our lockers. Let's practice working, at our abilities to do that. So also, how do I get to class? Am I going to be able to manage all these classes? In a way, COVID has kind of forced these kids to adapt a little sooner, because they're having to get on classes at different times of the day. And in a lot of ways, the structure that exists for our elementary setting is almost more comparable to the middle school, just because, again, they have to engage at certain times. They're being held accountable for that, that structure that exists there. So you can even apply that and say, hey, you've been through this COVID with the online part. Now you just got to kind of transfer those skills. And again, don't sweat the small stuff. It could be massing them. So work with them and really validate those feelings. This one too, support your child. Don't fight their battles. This is a part where Ms. O'Brien's going to talk more about, but really, I think it's more about, allowing you to know that this is a time where you want to be a part of their life, but it's a part of it's also a little more letting go. But finding that balance that is appropriate for you and your child. So recognizing this is an ongoing process, so not a one and done. I've had parents I've talked to, they go, yeah, I talked to little Jimmy. Jimmy said he's fine. Well, Jimmy's talked to me and he said he's really upset about X, Y, and Z. it might take a little time and talking with them and kind of breaking through, but keep checking in with them. This is something that the other counselors, middle school counselors brought up. That's great. All of that information that's being sent home to you, all of the information that's on the website, those are all talking points. Hey, I noticed that they're going to have a new dance club. You thinking about joining it? Hey, so, you know, how's the football team doing? Things like that. All of that can give you talking points and lead-ins to the conversation. And again, the overarching theme here, folks, is that you just want to build and continue to build that supportive net for them, that system that allows them to feel challenged by the stress, but not overwhelmed by it, and giving them an outlet for you to know, for them to know that you're there for them. And the biggest thing that research has told us is that students who feel emotionally supported are the most successful at their academics. And so if you can continue to do that, you know, it's gonna pay dividends in the long run. And finally, of course, if you're feeling like, I feel like I'm lost, or this isn't going quite as I thought, please don't hesitate to reach out to the elementary school counselors, because we're still working with these students. And of course, even the middle school counselors, you know, expressing your concerns there if there's something going on as they go into sixth grade. Once they're already in sixth grade, like, you know, all summer long, they really were upset or worried. It's information, knowledge is power. So, you know, if you can share that, we can help support in that way as well. I put this little thing here that resilience, these kids are incredibly resilient, but at the heart of it is self-efficacy, the belief that they can do something. And so with your support, your students and your children can definitely do these things. There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Ramey, helping us to really understand how we can support our students as they make that transition from elementary to middle school. That's really important and really key for us to keep in mind. But it's also probably as equally important to help them to understand and gain some independence. And so Ms. O'Brien is going to talk with us about how to promote independence with our students, with our children.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis. And thank you, fellow panelists and parents and students who are joining us this evening. So yeah, this transition to middle school, it's such a significant time. And again, it's one of my favorite things to assist with as a school counselor, working with the parents and the students, because what I find over the years is sometimes it's harder on the parents than it is on the kiddos, right? They're just, you know, my baby. And unfortunately, some of us as, you know, competent adults still maybe have some baggage from these years. So I would say one thing is, you know, try to be aware and realize that middle school is not the middle school that a lot of us experienced. A lot has changed. It really, really has. But it's a special time and it's an exciting time. It really, really is, parents. Don't neglect to look at it like that. It's a milestone, right? And when our kids are teeny tiny and they're toddlers, we look at those developmental milestones in their lives and are they doing what they need to be doing at each stage? Well, this is a continuation of that. You know, this is the next big milestone for them in terms of academics and maturity, right? So that's why we included this quote about there are two gifts we should give our children, roots and wings. And, you know, middle school is really the first time in a lot of their little lives that we need to really help them and encourage them to spread those wings. So Dr. Lewis, if you could advance to the next slide, please. So here are some of the ways we can do that as parents, really promoting that, that independence and that self-efficacy that Mr. Ramey spoke about. One really important thing is to encourage your student to keep track of their own grades in home access. I know a lot of you parents, you know, track your students' grades in home access and you look at those things periodically, and that's great. You know, we do that. But encourage your student to do that on their own. That's a really important thing. That's their grades, right? And we want them to have ownership of their grades, their assignments, what's due, what's maybe overdue, what's missing, so that they can take care of that. Because again, this is about their learning, right? Another good thing to do this summer before school starts, before sixth grade starts, is to really work with your student on developing an organizational system. Now, there are tons of different things out there, But as long as it works for your student, then that's all that matters. So whether it's a binder with tabs in it that are labeled for each subject, whether it's a big whiteboard, you know, in their room or their homework area that's got a list of their classes and what's going on with each class and who their teacher is, whether it's an agenda that they carry around with them. My daughter, who's in high school, uses an app called eGenda. I put the name of it right there to keep track of her assignments and her due dates. So have them, you know, you can help them set that up before school starts, but then really, you know, leave it up to them, try to, to kind of follow through and keep up with that organizational practice, because that's gonna really help them. The next one, and this is a real biggie, and this is hard for some of us parents. I'm gonna get real honest here, okay? Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Lewis, we weren't quite ready. I'm sorry, the third bullet is encouraging your student to contact their teachers themselves if there's an issue. You know, a lot of us as parents do that as an elementary school student. You know, my child has an issue or there's a problem. We reach out to the teachers, right, as their parents. But as we move into middle school and most importantly into high school and college, we've got to hand that responsibility over to our students. It's time, right? It's their learning and we really want them to be responsible for it. So for example, if your child has a late assignment, you know, they've checked their home access and they say, oh mom, this math assignment is late, I didn't get it turned in on time. A really great response from you as the parent could be, wow, bummer, what's your plan? What are you gonna do about that? Right? Instead of, oh, I'm gonna reach out to your teacher, I'm gonna call tomorrow, I'm gonna send an email. Talk to your child, leave it with your child and let them feel that discomfort. Because it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good when we've made a mistake. But, you know, if we continue to have these conversations for them and do these difficult things for them, we're not helping them. We're not helping them grow. We're not helping them develop into competent adults, which is what we all want. So even an absence, you know, if your child checks their home access and they see, oh my gosh, Miss So-and-so, you know, accidentally counted me absent for math. What do I do? Ask your child, well, what are you going to do about that? What's your plan? And then, you know, obviously you're there to support them. And if their plan, you know, maybe you can hear their plan and make sure it's doable and it works. But really letting your child begin to solve their own problems academically this is a great time to start doing that. Now, of course, the big stuff, you know, the big problems in terms of, you know, safety, bullying, things like that, obviously as parents, we're still going to step in and reach out to the school and make those communications. But in terms of their academics, I would really encourage you all to hand that over to the kiddos now. They can do it. You know, they really can. We've prepared them here in elementary school. And then lastly, and this has been spoken about before, but we just can't stress it enough, reminding your students that there are adults there that will help them. All of the adults on the middle school campus are there to help them. They don't need to be nervous or scared to approach a teacher, a hall monitor, a principal, a counselor. You know, those middle school staff are amazing. And they know there's a brand new crop of nervous, you know, sixth graders every single year. And everybody from the office staff to the custodians to teachers are used to and very comfortable with helping kiddos find room 208 and helping sixth graders open their locks. And, you know, to just really remind your kiddos to ask for help when they need it and not wait till it's too late. Now we can move on to the next slide, Dr. Lewis. Thank you. And then the last thing that I just wanted to talk about in terms of promoting independence is cell phones. You know, a lot of parents choose, or a lot of families, you know, choose sixth grade or the summer before sixth grade as the time to have their child get their first phone, right? And it's kind of become a rite of passage for a lot of our kiddos. And a lot of times it's needed. You know, I mean, with that promoting independence, they're on their own more. In middle school, they may be staying after school for a club or, you know, something like that. So they need to be able to communicate. You know, I didn't take the bus today, or, You know, can I go to so-and-so's house after school? So it really is a natural kind of time for kiddos to have their first phones. However, with great power comes great responsibility, right? Same thing with phones. You know, we've run into kiddos having a lot of trouble with phones sometimes. It's a lot of freedom, you know. It's the whole internet. Like, they're able to get in touch with anything, really, right at their fingertips. So with that being said, I would really encourage parents to use a cell phone contract with your kiddos in order to set healthy boundaries and set your expectations as a family about how you expect your child to use their phone. And reminding them, like I frequently remind mine, that's actually my phone. I'm allowing you to use it, but I pay the bills. So, I mean, it's true, right? We've got to set those parameters for the phone. Otherwise, it can become a tool of a lot of problems. So at the bottom of the slide, there's a link to a great article written by a mom about a cell phone contract. But this link is on a website called Common Sense Media. And parents, if you're not already familiar with Common Sense Media, I would really, really recommend it. It's got so many great resources about everything technology and our kiddos. There's great articles. There's all kinds of games and movies. If your kid comes home and says, I want to play this cool new online game that such and such plays, you can type it in there and look up the ratings on that game and, you know, what it's about and because, I mean, I don't know about you all, I don't know all that stuff. So Common Sense Media is a great resource, but they also have some links to some really good cell phone contracts that I would really encourage you all to use with your kiddos. And that's all I have. But like I said, parents, it's going to be okay. It really, really, really is. And the kiddos can do it. They blow me away every year when they come back and visit me and I see how grown up they are and how they just, you know, they look like babies now, still in 5th grade, but boy, come this time next year, they are rocking and rolling.
Thank you so much, Ms. O'Brien, for that information. A lot of information that I'm taking to utilize with my own personal. So thank you. Thank you again, parents, for joining us tonight. It is 6:59. Before you go, I do just want to remind you that this recording will be posted to our website. I'm going to say give me about 24 hours, so probably about this time tomorrow night. This will be posted on our website. The link to our website is shown there. There are currently a few videos from some of our previous conversations on that website if you want to take a look at those, if they pertain to some students that you have that are not in the elementary to middle school transition process. Once this video is posted, you will have the ability to view the closed captioning in various different languages. I do want to apologize. Typically, when we have our conversations with the school counselor, we provide a translation service for closed captioning in the 10 most common languages spoken here in the district, but we were having some technical difficulties with that today, so we didn't have that available. But again, once we post this to our district site, you will have the ability to change the closed captioning to the language that best suits your needs. I also want to mention that we have a department within our district called Parenting Programs, and they are currently working on a kind of interactive guide for the transition from elementary to middle school. They're going to incorporate this video as well, but they also have tons of information there that they're pulling from different places within the district. So pulling from counseling website, pulling from some of our campuses to really give you a one-stop place to get your information about the transition from elementary to middle school. And that information will be available in English and Spanish. It won't be available for a couple more weeks, but if you reach out to your school counselors here in a couple of weeks, or if you just go to our district website, either the Counseling Services website or to the Parenting Programs website, you will find that information there. So again, thank you all for joining us tonight. We really appreciated your time, taking your time out of your day to join us. And again, if you have any questions after today, feel free to contact your elementary counselors, for questions while your students are still with us in elementary. And then of course, if you have questions that are strictly about middle school, you can contact the middle school in which your child will be attending next year. Thank you all and have a good rest of your evening.